All right, welcome everybody. It is day 8 on this painting. We've been working through the background, been working on some drapery, and today we're going to follow up with a little more drapery work. And this time, rather than we got the color in, I figured I will start working on this area, and we'll just see how far we get. Kind of looking at the day, my goal would be to get this section here accomplished, and we'll just see if that's where we end up. I kind of like to think that way each day. Set aside my plan so that when I get started, I know to kind of pace myself and hopefully get me there. So let's do it. As always, feel free to drop in questions, comments, and we can get this Monday going. Take out a few choice brushes. I'll do a lot of blocking in today. Okay, let's see how the day ends up. And dipping into a little bit of medium, so I like to get just my brushes sort of primed. I've already mixed my piles of color, and they're essentially ready to go. So we're gonna begin seeing. Looks like it's a little dark. So it's always hard to tell until you're there. You know, is the color right? Is it ready? Looks like I need to make a pile that's just a little lighter. And this will be especially nice. I've already laid down the darks and lights of this fabric, and really we're gonna do a very light over painting of this, and just see what we can achieve today. Thanks for being present. Already I can tell the lightest colors I mixed, thinking, oh, this is the brightest white in this area, are not mixed white enough, or not light enough. So sometimes it takes dropping it in to see what to truly see what it looks like, and I usually can't tell that from my palette. I usually have to get it in there and, just admitting my own weakness. So. So I'm really grateful for the underpainting that I have, even though really I'm just setting down about the same color overall, but it will really, you know, it saves work. I know it probably seems like, well, you had to paint it over 2 different times, but you know, I can lay these layers on top, and you know, the layers underneath are just kind of giving it that little bit of oomph, that little bit of foundation, and it goes a long way. So I'm going to keep working through these areas, blocking them in, building them up. And yeah, you know, the sketch is fine, and it's gotten where it needs to be. But what we're going to need some more reinforcement in order for it to really work along the same level. I know you can see the blue and the red that we did Friday and Saturday. Picked up a little bit of a cold from my kids, so I will probably be clearing my throat often. Might have to take a Kleenex break now and then too. One of the unique challenges of being a full-time artist, I guess you don't really get paid sick leave. Or at least you're the only person in the studio. It's the first time I've used this new lead white in lots of layers and thickness, and its texture is very different. Apparently, it's more accurate, whereas a lot of paint manufacturers add things to their lead whites in order to achieve an overall same consistency with the rest of the paint. And so it's interesting. This is just a little it's kind of a little tacky and stringy. So when I pull it away from the pile, it kind of grabs and makes a little string of paint, which I am bound to make a mess of. this particular tube was made by natural pigments, and they've done a good job of getting the right consistency of the paint, and not trying to just match the rest of the paint, other tube colors consistencies. Busy day in the studio, getting kids ready for enrolled and things in school, so such is life. Probably not a lot of difference being noticed on the screen. I mean, I can tell on this side that, you know, I'm achieving more with this second layer, but it's probably not really picking up in the same way, you know, that I did last week with the intense reds and blues over the underpainting. This is kind of an underpainting on top of an underpainting being built. That a little too dark. It's one of those cases where, you know, I'll pick up a direct bit of white and just kind of dump it on top, and yeah, provide coverage, but also directly mix into what's there. You know, now that's a little more accurate. It's not sticking out so sorely as it was. And just blocking in today. Gonna try to achieve the final rendering of the Angel Gabriel's cloth. And garment. Be great if we finish the whole section today. But I doubt that I will get down into the lower half, but I think this is probably a realistic goal. There's no way around it when you're working on fabric with a lot of folds. It just takes a while. Unless, of course, you're John Singer Sargent, and then maybe it doesn't take very long. Right. Welcome, welcome. If you have any questions, let me know. And otherwise, I'm gonna kind of keep going. Feeling a little quiet on this Monday, a little somber. My painting that's up for auction at Sotheby's hasn't any bids, so I'm sad today. There's a couple hours left, but I definitely feeling down. There are always a lot of things to think about when you're working, painting drapery, and printing.
Sorry.
Printing.
Trying to redo my passport. Okay, I think I'm done.
Well, see ya. It's on this side.
Going to the Easter list.
Yeah, that's on the list. We guys, yeah, you guys are gonna have to. I'll let you guys sort that out as to the ride and everything.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
That's
that's fine.
what we were doing. I'll let you know.
Okay.
I'll look it up right now.
Okay.
Then I'll send you a text.
I asked Vince earlier and he was like, I don't know which one it is.
I know.
Ask Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yep.
figured you knew.
I got you.
Just so I know. Thanks.
It's the east one.
Well, no one on the stream right now, anyway. So
Oh, okay.
but that doesn't mean if you're watching later, you can't drop in a question, and we'll be glad to answer that at a later time. I'm gonna have some interesting hair here at some point that I'll be kind of covering, and so right now that intersection is a little strange, but it will be okay ultimately in the end. Yeah, this is the full-time gig, so it's Monday, and Monday means back at it. I think there's a part of us that, I don't know, thinks maybe that artists kind of work whenever they want, or whenever the feeling strikes, and that's just not the way it works. If you want to treat it as, A, your calling, B, your career. What I encourage people to do, even when I worked in the restaurant industry, it's kind of no matter what you're working on or putting your hands to treat it as though you would treat whatever that passion is that you're hoping to someday work from, because it's all, it seems like, oh, I'm not being fulfilled by the work I'm doing, but I will be as soon as I'm doing whatever it is, fill in the blank. And while there may be some differences, from doing one job to another, it's amazing how much the amount you care and put into and invest in the work that you think is only temporary. It's like the same thing happens when you get into your own, if you don't get into your own business or calling, or if you don't treat that with the same discipline that you would treat just a normal job, you're going to find that suddenly, when you get into that job that you've wanted, it starts to feel the same way. So a lot of discipline required to take it and make it full time. And now here I am, essentially with a cold, and today doesn't feel like it. Kind of bummed about the auction. Physically kind of worn down just due to sickness. But the show must go on. I'm going to work on just softening this edge a little bit. It has the kind of whites butting up directly. So I'm going to just take a little bit of kind of a darker color and just come out here and just make that edge a little softer. It's actually okay up here. Probably should not mess with it, but and this is a place where we kind of get to a space where there's actually an elastic band in here creating some of this tension. And it's one of those decisions of like, hinting is better than all out description of that, because there's easily 30 some folds excuse me, and it's just I'm gonna have to get out a little 3-hair brush or something to describe it. And yeah, we can do so with value in a way that can be very effective. Ooh, just felt pretty intense. Winded, tired street. We'll see if we make the goal today. As a right-hander and as someone who rests often my pinky on the surface when I'm working, I usually paint from left to right most times. So that's just because I tend to stick my finger in wet paint often when it works the other way. Paint's looking a little warmer than I'd like, but I also know my lighting is just slightly warm. So I'm thinking that's going to even out as soon as it's done. As soon as that light's off and I kind of see it fresh. Planning on that anyway. Nice thing about that is I do have a little, with this kind of second build up of essentially an underpainting. If we do need to cool it off some at the end, I can kind of rub in a bluer value that's cooler and achieve the result I want. If it seems out of place, this is more the. Sometimes it works well, and but then other times it's just it just feels really off. A lot of reflected light on the underside of these white folds, so. Still kind of bound and dedicated to finishing this entire thing via live stream. So definitely continue to check back in, see how it's going. Or just leave it up, come back. Like I'm getting there, and you can probably see I'm certainly building up. It's getting lighter as now that there's two layers of white. It's certainly getting lighter and just a little more color. And that's our goal, to try to achieve. I wouldn't be able to achieve this without this. And I think that's good to kind of remember when we're working, at least in this indirect method. I mean, you can really lay the paint in, you can get it thick, but in this way, I tend to work thinner, and so I require a lot more build-up. One of the nice things about this second layer is, I'm kind of almost painting entirely back on top of it, but then I can still use some of this layer, not having to result in like full coverage again, and just allowing that to kind of show through here and there. Using it. right now I'm just using two different brushes. About dark or mid-range, because there's not very many deep darks or near blacks or near 100% values in this area. So I'm just using a little bit of brush for my whites, my lighter areas, and this for about 50%. And I can allow those to work off of each other, and so I can build up with one, press a little harder, get a stronger dark there if I need it, or I can rake lightly across, and I can bring that just a little bit lighter again. Do you ever have a sudden memory that's just really vivid in your mind, like seemingly out of nowhere? So I don't know, there must have been some kind of connection that brought it up, but just thinking, I don't know, probably 5 or so years ago at this point, being at the Pikes Peak trailhead, about to hike Pikes Peak, and then just kind of really picturing the space at the bottom too, where you come off the cog train. I hiked up, rode back down. It's pretty intense go. 13 miles to the peak from the trailhead. So to come back another 13, even though you're going down, and gravity, with all of gravity's assistance, I still didn't feel like quite making it. Which, hey, I mean, you gotta realize, talking to a lowlander, and quite used to the oxygen levels that I have here in Kansas. So it was a challenge. But it was good to have the cog train time reserved, that then forced me to pick up the pace a few times and kick it into gear. So not sure why that memory came, but it did. It's a fun time. Well, miserable at the time, but looking back on it, I don't know why we do that suddenly. It's fond. It's a fond memory. Probably means I need to get out. Thinking about it. Get out and go somewhere. Angel Gabriel's garment. If you want, you feel free to grab that and you can put it up on your in your space.
No, it's cool. I'm just filling out fast food and school stuff.
Awesome. That's exciting.
And do digital marketing.
Beautiful. Okay, Sean's looking into digital marketing, so
Hopefully in a couple of years the videos will look a lot better.
we'll get some better equipment too.
Yeah. Gotta go grab the information
Sounds
I
good.
got for school.
Yep. Talked about it a couple of times, but it's important to find that spot that you're really happy with in the day's work. Kind of in how until you find that, kind of feel frustrated. So feeling a little bit of that today. I feel like I've really found that spot that I like yet. Got a lot of paint on there, so I'm gonna break out my buffer brush, and I'm also gonna break out my fan brush. And so these two brushes are quite nice. Just in general, I mean, I use them not to I don't use a fan brush to paint the tops of trees or anything like that, but I do use it to help me drag paint lines and make a better three-dimensional feeling. So sometimes I don't really have the room to use this, and I have to use this. But I'll take once I've got a fold of fabric here made, I will then just take my brush and I'll start at the fold and I'll just kind of pull it in like I imagined it. And that's, you're not going to really probably see, and maybe you can pick up a little bit of these brush marks, but suddenly they're moving with the fabric. And I'm going to do the same over here. And just kind of drag this in like that. In this, I know I have a valley, so I can do the same where I kind of drag that valley up into that next fold. And, I've got a set of folds here, so I can pull that over. This is something I probably need like hyper zoomed in camera for, to be able to see now what the brush strokes are doing. So I'm just dragging that paint so that it follows the form. It's kind of a tough angle that I have, that you can't really tell that anything is moving in this direction or if it's going back in space or coming toward us. It's a little difficult, but you know, I can still just play with some of those lines, pull them in, create those 3 dimensions. Told you I'd put my finger in wet paint, just did it. And I will want to sort that out just because I am using lead today in copious quantities. The real danger with using lead white or using heavy metal pigments within your paint is ingestion or inhalation. So this is not as concerning on the skin. At the same time, there is absorption that happens in the skin, so you don't necessarily want to just leave it there. So I'm kind of using my knee to brace my elbow to just give me a little bit more control. And I'm always amazed what this does. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it should make all that much difference, but it ends up really working. I wish that could be really evident in the video, but I know that it can't be. If we had a 4K stream with a really up close lens, you know, maybe we could see that. But some of that movement has helped me like that drapery in the back a little better, so that's a win. Just was feeling that moment of needing something to work better. As always, if you have questions about any part of this process, or frankly, any question at all about painting, happy to talk about it. I may not always have the answer because maybe I don't use a certain medium or something else that you want to know more information about, but I can talk about my 20 years experience doing this and what I've learned painting professionally during that time. One of the things I really want to do is I just want to see you succeed in your art making. You know, it's especially when it comes to, you know, painting the figure or painting what you see. Doing so successfully is one of the most satisfying accomplishments there is. And you know, and having some confidence in what you're making every time you approach the easel, that you have a method, that the method works. I'd really love to be an asset.
Georgia Rennick. Question from a novice. Are you using anything to thin the paint on these upper layers?
Great to hear from you. Great question. Thanks for being here. So I've made a few mixtures. I'm going to show you if you're still on, hopefully. So I've made a few mixtures here of kind of a grayscale, but it's a little bit of a warmer grayscale for the fabric. Within those piles, I've added a little bit of walnut oil gel. So at this point, I mean, I'm using next to no thinner. I'm just pulling paint directly from the piles I've made. And I'm not saying that that's a right or wrong way to do it, or if the, you know, but for me, it's a little less wet and wild, and I feel like I have more control. Sean, you can grab the monitor there if you want, so you don't have to lean over. So I do have Sean in the house, so he'll be able to help moderate. So great question, Georgina. Thanks. Happy to field any more, because one of the things that I just forget is this is to a degree this is such an automated process for me, and I forget to mention things, and so yeah, great question, thank you. Yeah, 'cause there's enough movement. And again, I know it's going to be hard to see from the screen, but me pulling that paint a little bit, because there is enough of this kind of thick paint body on top of this layer here that it allows me, you know, I guess if it was really wet with thinner, it would move in a different way. And at least for the way that I've kind of figured out how to make painting work, I'll use this kind of thicker application, knowing that, you know, the strokes that I'm making are also dragging that paint, and I'm still seeing some of that under layer there, even if it's hard to make out.
Thanks. The paint looks very fluid, so you're still maintaining the fat with the walnut oil.
Yeah, and so I know the layer below was applied with I use Chelsea Classical Studios, their lavender spike oil medium, and I used the lean their lean pre-mixture, and that's good too, because I mean in the studio I don't have ventilation. It's just a home studio, and so I try to, as much as possible, avoid products with VOCs. Although, you know, this is a painting. I was talking with a patron about this, and you know, oil painting, I should say, it's a very toxic medium. There's sort of no way around it. There's a lot you can do to mitigate it, but yeah, it's rough. One of the things that I know hasn't happened yet is, you know, to a degree I've been describing the back, and I've not been able to really describe the form as it turns around here, and that's about to happen. That's also going to change my overall disposition toward the painting. You know, right now I'm not terribly excited about the section I'm working on, but I know as soon as I begin turning the form here and we get to our terminus, and then we get to the rest of the area that falls in shadow, that it will get better very quickly. For me, I'll just be more excited about it, you know. I know. I think in drapery, it's also important to kind of pick and choose your battles. So, where do I want really good success? And it doesn't have to be everywhere. But I do need to think about, okay, what's really, what are the areas that are really important, and then letting some of those areas that have been rendered very well describe areas that don't make a lot of sense, because especially as it kind of curves around the back here, we're getting a lot of layering, and it's just hard to make out what's truly happening there. Yeah, I think we'll generally say, okay, yeah, I think I see that there's something happening that I remember happens with fabric, but yeah, I definitely got to get a few areas that are really described well, and I think this is an opportunity, kind of this whole piece here. The sleeve will be a great opportunity too, because I have some things that I can really describe, and the same for this. This just gets a little too busy, and doesn't really follow in form. It doesn't follow the anatomy underneath very well. Right? And those are things I try to be mindful of when I'm having my modeling session, but I don't always achieve that. Georgina, for your question earlier, I just dipped into a little bit of thinner. I was gonna do a bigger section here, and I thought, I just want a little more. I also want it to be a little cooler than it's reading here, so I'm dipping into my ultramarine blue and getting some of that in here. It's a nice shadow. That does lighten up quite a bit. As it goes back this way, and those are those little things to kind of keep an eye on when you're working. Reflected light is a really good thing to add, because we exist in these spaces where that sort of stuff's happening all of the time, and light's reflecting off the room that you're in. Really tells a lot about how the light's going to hit form and what's going to happen, and so it's good to have, pay close attention to what's happening in some of these reflected light areas. Got a pretty good dark here. I'm gonna block it in. For me, this is a very satisfying moment to drop this in. Because finally it starts to feel like this is doing what I know it will do eventually, but it's still, the waiting can be hard. And then, if I can avoid using smaller brushes, I will, and I'll just kind of continue using these two. These are a EVWIII mixed synthetic brush. I like them. I've kind of gotten used to using them, and I think on the whole they do a pretty good job of maintaining their shape and working for a while. One of the things that I run into just with the way I work, I tend to abuse the brush quite a bit, and they don't last long, but I found these last pretty long for me. Another thing, in order to limit the amount of VOCs, volatile organic compounds, in the studio, I don't keep like an odorless mineral spirits jar open for cleaning brushes, and I just wipe them off. So that does me no favors with brush life, because they're just dry and being raked around and abused. You might have seen just how darkening that area suddenly made this piece sit out on top of this, and then there's another, and that's just how quickly, when we make an adjustment in the drapery, that it tells us what's happening three-dimensionally. And so now it's even closer to the mark there. A little bit of a shadow and then reflected light underneath. I think the key to remember with any of this is, you get a lot of questions. Well, should I do it this way or do it that way, or what's the right way? And oil as a medium is very forgiving, and so you don't have to say, oh well, I've got to make it, fat over lean, or I've got to, if it's not this way, it's not the right way. And you know what? There's just been too many oil painters throughout the centuries who have taken oil and put it down in such varying ways that you just can't. And whose paintings are still standing, and they're doing just fine. There might be some cracking, but these things are hundreds of years old, but the image is still sound, and that's one of the reasons why it's an enduring medium. The images, even if this starts to slowly fall apart, this compared to something I print out, there's just there's no even comparison, which is why, in 400 years ago, 500 years ago, it was like, wow, this medium is so strong, durable. So don't get too hung up on, is this right or wrong, or is this the right way to do it or not. There's a lot of room for the medium and trying new and different things with it. And only take it so seriously. talked a little bit about this area that is kind of an elastic area. So what I'm going to do, rather than describe each and every one of these, there was just no need to. I just want to get the value right, get a few of the folds cinching kind of in the right way, so that suddenly we look at it, we know what it is. Painting is always this exercise in putting down the right information, not all information. Cameras are good at getting down all information. Painters, we want to get down the right information. What's enough that still gives it life? And that's usually when I stop. I try not to take it any farther. The point where it's kind of working and it feels alive. It still feels. I still see some brush. I still see evidence of a creator and not a machine. And then those are the good times to stop. Okay, that's probably another good time to start describing some of these. And I've kind of blocked in this area. I worked a little bit on that area. I'm pretty happy with it. We'll kind of see how I feel once I get the rest of this in, if this is working of its own accord or if it needs a little more attention. But I want to now work this area in a little bit. So I'm taking this little camel hair, this little buffer, and much like I did earlier with the fan brush, I could also do it this way too. Here's a great opportunity to really tell and follow the form so that our eyes see this fold is coming forward. So I'm going to make these strokes that are curved. They're pulling paint across. And are creating now this depth effect that, from my vantage point, I can make out really well. Got some harder edges I want to just soften in there, so I'll take this and I'll do the same thing. I'm going to follow those same lines. I might soften just some of those lines that were pulled. So each one of these is a little kind of half moon pull every time I do it. And now that fold right here for me, I'm really feeling that volume. You do the same thing with the one below it. really not much room to pull. So I'm going to exaggerate that movement just a little bit so you can kind of see, get right at that edge, pull it down and around. So now we have space where this one's coming here, so we can really pull that around, in, down, and around. How about this whole arc here? We can pull this in, around, down. That was maybe too much, but now I can just take some of that out, just some. I just want to hint at it. These are things that the eye picks up on. We maybe don't immediately. I think too, some of the little breaks that happen make it appear a little more like a textile. So some of the rougher, each one of these little lines that gets pulled starts to feel like a thread without trying to get in there and to describe a bunch of threads. Do the same thing up here. And so my movement is the opposite way here. So I'm making my curve here, just like I made it here, because I want all of these marks to move forward into this volume right here. I really want that to come forward. So I'm using those contour line form following marks to move that this way. We're going to do the same with hands, faces. It works as a tool to create space in your paintings. You want to try to tell about what's happening, some of those volumes. This is a great way to do so. Kind of sad. Our friend David isn't here today because he's going places in the world, and well, this is a sick house, so he's making a good decision to not be here. But if he's watching, love you, man. And this is the slow march of the drapery. I'm kind of started in here, working my way around, and I still try to work quickly, about as quickly as I can have the courage to do, because it does make a difference. If I can block in some of these, I can move a little faster. I do think there's something honest about a quick judgment and in painting, and I think maybe it has to do a little bit more with feeling and intuition. So I like to go with those and leave a lot of space for that. So if I get too slow or I get too focused on little details, then I'm getting behind. There comes a time in each section where, in order to say and look at that section as though, hey, is this ready? Is this complete? Is this done? I've got to get the next area at least somewhat described so that I know. Sometimes I don't like something simply because I'm seeing a lot of the stuff around it and being like, oh, why is that not working yet? A lot of times because there's just a little bit of information missing that it just needs a little bit more context. Oh, so far so good. And then sometimes I just see some parts, I'm like, oh, I didn't finish that. And that happens too.
Hey, can I ask you a question about this list?
Yeah.
Hey, so to pick up the frame, it's frameworks.
It is. Probably would make sense to maybe do it all together when I take the car and stuff. I mean, like, rather than like right now, if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm just making sure.
Yeah. Yep. Frameworks. They're that same place building we went to.
Over on like web.
Yeah, near web there, 37th and web.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's a Mark 90 shift?
That is gonna need a lot of explanation, but.
Convert visitation.
All of the visitation images need to be changed into DNG files, just like we did for this.
Is that just like a PDF file, but DNG file?
No. So you remember how?
We had to. Okay,
yeah.
Because of the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I remember.
Yeah.
We had to use that converting thing.
So those will probably all have to be brought off the camera and put into a folder on the desktop and then converted into another folder.
Okay, and that email response to the Oklahoma.
Yeah, that person. Yeah, there's a few other just kind of quick responses you could make to some comments last week too.
then timeline. It's just like a rough timeline of what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I think.
What
Just
my idea is.
establishing, yeah.
Okay. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Oops. All right, we're gonna feel mostly good. I mean, there's a lot of little things that I'll have to come back and address, which always happens. But it's a good start there. I'm liking what I'm seeing so far, so good. Work on some more of these folds here. A lot of lines, a lot in the shadow. A few really deep, dark areas. Just kind of cinch around the waist. It's pretty dark. Feel free to drop a question if you've got one. I even welcome critiques, because even if you feel like just being an armchair quarterback, that's fine with me too. It'll cause me to take a look, relook, reassess, and only makes the work better. Welcome, welcome. It's good to have you. Feel free to drop a question in. And we are well underway here, describing the fabric on the angel Gabriel. The narrative I've been asked to depict is the Annunciation, and been working at it for numerous days now. You can go back and you can see every part of the process. And we are getting there. I'm still in the what I call the ugly teenager phase, where there's too many things left undone. It's the ratio is increasing from finished areas to non-finished areas, by the hour, but it's still can't quite see it all together, and that's always it's always a hard time. And in that time, I'm usually the most discouraged because it's unfinished, and I've also put a lot of work into it, right? And so those times are the hardest. So I'm definitely kind of in that moment. It's nice to be able to talk about it, though. And just re-emphasize how it happens every time in every painting. So your work, you're going to experience some frustration when you're doing it, and to know that that's a natural part of the creative process. And I don't know, you kind of have to hate it before you're happy with it. I always have to go through the stage of disappointment, and I'm kind of convinced this is never going to work, or this is never going to turn out. It's like I have to go through that each time. So I'm in the thick of it right now. So far, I'm happy with how the day's going, but there are definite better days than others, and I'm not a sports guy by any stretch, but we've got a whole bunch of athletes who are having to show their absolute best, and a lot of times just one day is all they get opportunity to try to show that they are good enough. And some days are just bad painting days. Like, I'm sure there's just bad sports days where it's just not coming together, or the energy's just not there, or whatever it is. So I can guess knowing that keeps me from getting too dark and down in the dumps to the point where I quit. Knowing that usually it's at that darkest moment that I'm about to turn the corner and feel excited about the work. So I'm blocking in these little shapes that I see. Whenever I'm working drapery, I'm just looking for these little shapes of light and dark, which is very forgiving, by the way. You don't have to have it all perfect in order for it to work. Sure, there's some drapery that tells about the form underneath, and that's going to be a little more important to pay attention to. But other parts are you know, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to describe it just right. No one is ever going to know that this fold existed or didn't exist in just this way. And so as long as you're handling it within reason, you know, it's going to be okay. Especially when I get down to some of these areas that are a little more busy. You know, there's a lot of linear elements present, as there's this fold after fold falling on top of one another, and even that can get to be too much. It just needs to be, all that detail is unnecessary. So this is the part where I just need to get enough of this in to see if it's working. Have I captured the right and emphasized the right parts? And if I have, then I can move on and begin to render it a little more. But until that, you know, I'm working on just getting these little bits in until I arrive at that point. Okay, I think it's mostly working. Trying to get some reflected light on the bottom side here. I have some areas that are actually in light. You notice my stroke is following. Sometimes I'll do a line, but then other times I'll just pull it as though I'm following the form a little bit there. Sometimes you just end up back where you were, like, oh yeah, I wanna adjust that. see a little part that just doesn't quite look like I want it to look.
Did you see this comment?
Nope, probably not.
It says, "How do you get skin tone?"
Skin tones. I don't know if you're still on. If you asked that question probably ages ago, and I missed it. Skin tones. Wow, that's a tough one, because it seems like it should be an equation. Like, oh, we'll mix these colors together and you get it. But it just varies so much, and depending on the light, I might use colors that I just wouldn't think of. So if the light is warmer, this would be for more Caucasian skin tones. I would use white, yellow ochre, cad red, but but even those together aren't really the answer, because there's going to be ways in which you're even like describing the lighter whites here and the areas here. Yeah, I used the same colors, but I've used them in different mixtures. I like to work with a lot of blues and cool greens as well when I'm doing skin tones, to allow some of that warm, cool action to happen. And I wish it was as easy as just kind of saying, oh well, it's this, but it does require a lot of study and learning what they are. I mean, I think early on I was like, oh, I've kind of got this skin tone thing figured out, and this was probably, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years ago, but I didn't. And I remember painting a model in kind of a similar light situation as this, and rather than just assuming I knew what the color was, I mixed what was there, what I saw, and lo and behold, I put some of these down, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I've never done this before, but this is the most, accurate skin tone I've ever made. So it requires a lot of mixing of various tube colors to achieve a really good skin tone. And I will say, just stick around, because we're getting there. We'll be doing skin tones probably this week. So come back, check back in, and even if you can't make the live stream and ask more questions live, you can. All these videos are going to be on there. We're not taking them down, and you can drop a question in there, and I'll try to explain it the best I can. But your questions are always better than my explanations, so I love to hear them. Your questions are better because I know I only know what I know, and I want to know what you want to know, and I want to see you become the artist that you have goals to become. So helps me to know how I can assist that. So please drop that question in, even if it's after the fact, just so you can make a comment, and I'll be glad to answer it. I will say this about skin tones. We tend to make them have too much color when really we are all, and I mean ALL, all of us, more or less a low saturation orange. All of us. Every single one of us on Earth. Different variations, but that's really it. And by low saturation, I mean color that's near neutral. And a neutral, when I say the word neutral, I mean a word that just something that doesn't have very much hue in it, and hue is kind of the base attribute of a color. So if I say, you know, all of us, and I do mean all of us, are a low chroma or low saturation orange, orange is the hue. Of course, that will vary tremendously between person to person, but on the whole, we are near neutral. We don't have very much of that hue present, but it is there, and it kind of gives the base color, if you will, for what we're doing. I like how this is coming. Pretty happy with the section down here.
Hey, what day is this? Day 6?
Today
Yeah.
is 8.
Wow.
And I already put it in there for today.
Yeah, I'm making
Yeah.
the thumbnail.
So yeah, day 8.
It's the Annunciation.
The Annunciation, yeah.
Okay.
If you open up one of the previous files that we've made, you'll have like the tape, the font, you'll have all those layers in there, and you can just add the new information in
I was gonna try something new.
stylistically. Okay, that's fine too. Yeah. Just also wanted to give you the option of doing that too.
Doing the easy way.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't work out, I'll do it that way. But
Yeah.
I did want to try something to make it look a little bit different.
Sounds great. Okay, I think that's all right. Areas in the dark, and drapery, they don't have to be described with the same detail, and for them to work. So I think that's just a good thing to note, because again, we're trying to keep this as energetic as possible, not buckle down and give the viewer too much information that they don't need. I'll break out my little buffer here and just pull on some of these, round them out some. How did it get to be 11:30? Sometimes I'm amazed. I haven't looked at the clock for the last 2 hours. Just been sitting here. wrestling away. Okay, I think that's actually a really good stopping point for this part 1 session. We will be back this afternoon for sure. I'm gonna get this puffy sleeve in, and I'm really looking forward to it. There's a lot of folds that I can describe and create a nice nice volume. I'm happy with the work this morning, but it is time to say goodbye for a little bit.
Georgia did comment. She said, I was reading about an old master technique of doing the underpainting in a chroma green for skin tones. Something I want to, but am afraid to try.
Yeah. No, that's, there's, I'm going to say Adrian Gottlieb, I think, he is the master when it comes to that. So if you look up his work, Gottlieb, Gottleib, I'm not sure, German spelling. And he does really well. Yeah, so you get those cool colors underneath, and when you put your warm, fleshy tones over that cool, you get some great energy. I have not done it necessarily, but I think I understand the theory of it well enough to say yes, there could be some very beautiful things that happen just because oil, being the transparent medium that it is, lends itself to achieving that. So yeah, let me know how it goes. I'm gonna encourage you to be brave and get out there and do it. So, and let me know how it goes. But check out Adrian's work. I think you'll like it, and I think he has some even some Instagram posts or a few things that kind of show a little bit of that process. So
that's it.
All right, that's it. Thanks for your questions. Thanks everybody. We'll be back in a couple hours.